I've been doing POPO since 2015, which means 2019 was year number 5 for me.
How'd you find out about it?
Oh God, how does anyone find out about anything? I think it must have been word of mouth, and it was possibly Facebook. Uh, one of the good things to come out of Facebook. But I honestly don't even remember. It may have been some people that I used to, study with for my MFA, but I graduated from that in 2013. So maybe I heard about it and it took me 2 years to get my act together. I don't quite recall.
Where'd you do your MFA?
I did it at the Solstice MFA program at Pine Manor College in Chestnut Hill, which is basically Boston. Um, and it's a great program because it's one of those 10-day low residency things, and then the rest of the semester you work from home. And as it turns out, I'm pretty decent at working from home. So,
What attracted you to POPO in the first place?
well, there's a number of reasons, especially after having graduated. Losing that sense of like being part of a close community of people who were really engaged in writing on the regular. I could feel it had only been a year and a half and I could already feel some of my writing start to be like, it's going downhill because I'm not using it. You know what I mean? It's like I studied Japanese in college for 4 years, but I can't speak Japanese anymore. I could barely do it back then, but the whole point is I didn't want that to happen with my writing. And I work best when I can feel accountable to other people at the same time. So that's what drew me to it. The sense, the huge bonus being, oh, and I'm going to get poems coming in from all these other people who are, being creative. It's just such a generative experience. And that's what drew me to it.
When you talk about community, tell me how that manifests and who are some of the stars in your personal constellation, your personal POPO uh, constellation.
So specifically within the Poetry Fest.
Yeah, I think so. And what about the fest? I mean, we send cards and we get cards. Is it the Facebook page that aids with a sense of community, or how does that community you know enjoy itself? I mean, how does it happen for you?
Well, for me, I mean, definitely the Facebook community is sort of like the back end of it, so to speak, because the writing and sharing of words with people is the part that really gets you to feel that connection, because people are sharing, their in-depth experiences or the moments that struck them and jumped out and became a poem. But at the same time, having a group where people can publicly or semi-publicly follow along one another's poetry quest for the month is really, really helpful. It's encouraging to see when you're not the only person who's 3 days behind or 3 weeks behind or 3 months behind. I mean, I never got that far behind, but I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, it's encouraging to know that, like, okay, you didn't get it done on August 31st, and it's okay, just keep with it. Or, you're having a hard time with your life, so is she, and so is he, and they're finding ways to turn it into writing, and writing in general, sharing of poetry with other people and having that tangible connection with the postcard can be so healing. And let me tell you, the past 5 years there have been many, many times where I personally needed some of that healing, and it got me through it to know that there were other people out there sending me little pieces of their lives. And as far as my personal would you say rock stars for the POPO Fest? I
As
don't
an
know.
escalation, but that's good.
Yeah, well, there's stars, and there's you get me. Well, I mean, there's this Paul Nelson guy, but I mean, other than him, other than the pandering part,
The truth,
um,
the truth will come out about that guy. Let me tell you.
oh boy, I'm busy that day, but but uh, I mean, definitely the first name that really pops out. It might not be any surprise to anyone who's been on the Facebook group for a long time, but Terry Holzman was the first year, and she probably had done it prior years, and I know she did it subsequent years, but back in 2015, I'm like chugging along, doing my best to keep one at a time, one day, one poem a day. And I think I did it. I think I hit all 31 and 31. And she's like, I'm on poem number 278. And I'm like, what, are you kidding me? But that also showed me that she exemplified the energy of the fest and set a really, really firm example for what it could be if you just make a point to keep pushing at it. And so I kept pushing at it. So she was one of them. Essie Ingram who was the first recipient of any of my postcards for the Postcard Fest, and we've been in the same group pretty much every year since. And if not, we exchange a card anyway. HV Cremond, I'm in a group with her a lot, and she always has something great to say on her cards, just with her writing. Oh my gosh, the list is huge. Gay Guard Chamberlain, Mary Beth Frezon, I'm probably screwing up pronunciations, but you know what? They're not here, so whatever. There's a huge list, and I have personal favorite poems in my two binders, which you've seen some of in the brief time when those videos were up. That I have personal favorites from all sorts of people. Elizabeth Woods. I just keep listing names for the rest of the time if you want to do that.
Well, we could do that, or I could ask you what you think about the establishment of
Colette Dutton. Colette Dutton and Abaya Thomas. Sorry to cut you off, but
No, they
I
are,
would be remiss if I didn't say them as
yeah,
well.
they're worth mentioning. Absolutely, the graphics are amazing, and the poems.
And the poems that accompany them.
The poems
I mean,
fun.
it's such a comprehensive package, and a lot of those visual things inspired me to branch out and do some visual stuff of my own too, which I really hadn't.
This problem with people being late. Do you advocate the establishment of a POPO police force or SWAT team to attend to people who are not hitting the deadline?
No, I mean, having, let's see. Last year I was in the middle of moving from Austin, Texas to New Jersey, in the middle of August. So yeah, I ended up being a few days late, and I don't think anyone batted an eye. They still got their cards. And honestly, this year has been all sorts of a mess at times, and I was a little bit later this year than last year. But the point is, I got those cards out, and I don't think anyone was upset that they got a card in the middle of September or whatever, instead of a week after I sent it in August. But that being said, I think there should be some degree of understanding that, oh, if I haven't gotten a card from you, and it's the middle or the end of September, I think it's, and I think the first year or two, I maybe ruffled a couple feathers because I was like, oh, I'm still missing cards from you, and you, sort of thing, as opposed not to be like, come on, get on it, but just to be like, if you sent it, it didn't get to me, just as a post, because I didn't know the etiquette, I suppose. But I think it's altogether reasonable to be able to say, oh, I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just checking in with you because if you sent a card, it never got to me. And if you didn't send a card yet, that's fine. You do you, but if you did send it already, it never got here. Would you mind sending me a scan so I don't lose out on that experience? I
How does POPO augment your own poetry composition practice?
well, sometimes it augments it, and sometimes I mean, in the past couple of years, the majority of the poems that I've written during the POPO Fest in a given year, just because I've had, again, a number of hectic years in the past few, from being, pretty badly banged up at work one year and moving another year and getting established another year, and all that stuff builds up, and you don't always have, you know no one ever has the time. The point is, you have to make the time. Sometimes it's a lot harder to just stop and make the time if there's not this sense of community, or this, like I said earlier, this obligation to others. And there's so many things I'd love to write, and I'm not as good at setting down to write in and of myself as I am to write to somebody, and that's just all there is to it there.
Take us through your practice. You get the list, you're at your desk, you got stamps in a drawer, you got postcards. How do you pick a postcard? Do you make your own cards? How do you do it? Do you get the first person's name underneath you and write their address in the card and then go, or how does it work for you?
Well, each year has been a little bit different. As the years go by, I start to gather I actually have this box here. So Deb Stone is another one. I've got a whole bunch of postcards, some of which I've purchased or obtained, whether it's a thrift store, whether it's a wherever, whether it's a promotional thing like this fat tire coaster / postcard that I will one day mail. And then there's just pictures that I find online that are just so striking. I say, this is going to have a poem on it one day. And so I print those out on cardstock and that kind of thing. And I make sure to attribute the pictures to their, whoever created them and whatever else, to share, oh, this is this beautiful thing that somebody made or somebody took a picture of. I want to share it with you, kind of thing. And then some of them I make, I have my own collages. And when it comes to those ones, I will write on them and then I will put them in an envelope. I will essentially draw a postcard stamp on there and then put them in an envelope with a regular stamp, just because the first year I sent collages without a postcard stamp and they would just get damaged in the mail. So but as far as it goes, I have my list. I go down it. I keep track of what poem I wrote, on the back of, I don't know, it's not procedure stuff. I feel like I'm boring myself and I don't want to be boring to you. But so for instance, I've got this checklist here. So I don't know how much of it you can see, but down on the side over here, I've got the recipient, like this top one is for you. So I have written down the name of the poem, which was Welcome Back Asshat. Just like that, kind of.
Isn't that amazing? I do the same exact thing.
Yeah. And then I put a little check mark anytime I receive a card, just so that I can keep track of that. I also have my binder, which I alluded to, for all the cards that I receive, and I organize them in, not necessarily in chronological order by when I received them, but as if I were to have gotten every card from every person in the order that they should have been sent. I put them in that order. So if you go up the list, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. But as far as my writing process goes, I know the first year I always sat down to write on the card in the spirit of the fest to begin with. Every morning, though, these days, I walk for 4 miles with my wife. And a lot of the times, especially during the postcard fest, poems come to me, and I'm not going to slow down the walk. I'm not going to be like, oh, I got to bust out these cards that I'm keeping and destroying in my pocket. I bring out my phone and I write on the phone while I'm walking, and somehow I make it without tripping and dying. And then I transcribe them onto the card, which is cheating, some might say, but I might say, would you like a card or not?
How about bonus cards? A lot of people send out bonus cards. You had your hands full at least a couple of times in the last 5 years just getting the 31 out, but do you send you've at least sent one bonus card to Sharon Ingram?
Yeah, I every year I send a bonus card to anyone who's sent me a bonus card, at the very least. In fact, I just got one from T. Thibodeau Bar. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name quite right, but she's not here. So it was hiding in a like a coupon booklet or something for the last 3 months or whatever, and Brittany found it, and so I have a bonus card number 13 to write, but I'm sure she'll understand if it's a few months down the line. Not from now, but I mean from when she sent it, now that she knows. But I always send a response, and then if I have the energy for it and the time, if there's other people who just really stuck out to me or spoke to me with some of their writing, I will send bonuses to them. This year, I really wanted to, I was super ambitious and too ambitious for my own good. I wanted to write a postcard poem for all the new folks. I just didn't get to, and that's my ambition. And if I set that ambition now, maybe I'll get to it next year. I don't know.
The POPO welcoming committee.
Yeah, and I mean, I did whatever else I could to try to be welcoming. In that I know that a lot of people have that same aspiration. They want to send bonus cards to the new folks and really welcome them to it, so that it continues to grow in the way that I think we all believe it should. And so what I did, as you know, on the Facebook page, I compiled a list of every new person I saw or heard of or whatever else, so that everyone could just have a quick reference point. Okay, it's this person, let me look them up on the master list and send them a card, so that it wasn't just digging through based on memory. And I did the same for all the international names, so that people could just jump through that quicker, just as my way of trying to facilitate that, again, with the expectation that I would have needed that too if I was going to follow through on my ambitions to write more.
Our goal for the Postcard Fest is 1 billion people.
All right, 1 in 7 for now. One by the time we hit that, maybe 1 in 15 in the world.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Three things you love about the project.
Oh man. I mean, I love having this anthology of 200 plus postcards that I've received in the past 5 years with just absolutely beautiful poems that I can just hand to a friend and say, check this out. How cool is this? And I've yet to find anyone who's like, yeah, I guess that's okay. It's like, if it weren't for the fact that putting it on the coffee table would mean crap would get spilled on it all the time, there is no better coffee table book than this. And of course, it's not on my coffee table because I don't want to have all these precious things destroyed. Tanya Corrigan's another one. She's done some really awesome artwork on hers, like pen sketchings, and they are phenomenal. Kristen Cleage, again, would be remiss if I didn't just keep dropping names. So that's number one. What else? I mean, obviously, being able to vent sometimes, or share my experiences sometimes, or just in general, just to write, and have a community of people who are interested in reading my writing, that is invaluable. I mean, it there were a few years back, I made a personal declaration that I would try to really incorporate the things that mattered to me more actively in my life. And the Postcard Fest is one of those things that really makes it possible for me. So that's two. What's the third thing? I get, and I think this is probably a common answer somewhere along the line, but it reinvigorates the notion of going to pick up your mail. I mean, like, it's such a simple thing, but honestly, I walk by the little mail slot at our front door every day, at least twice. And when it's not August, I don't check that mailbox more than like 3 times a week. And I don't pull from that mailbox more than once a week. I just let it build up because I know there's nothing I actually care about in there. And then for like the entirety of September, I'm kicking the habit of like checking the mailbox 4 times a day because I'm just excited about something so that's been rendered so benign, and not benign, but banal from all the crap mail that you get. It revitalizes something that's so soulless otherwise. That's going to be my number three. I have a better one somewhere, but
That's all
oh
right.
well.
What advice would you have for someone considering joining the fest?
Do it. I mean, beyond that, I guess the advice would be find $10 and a means of paying $10 to be part of it. All that money goes to a really good, all the good services that you do with the Cascadia Poetry Lab, right? Am I saying that right?
Cascadia Poetry Fest and Seattle Poetics Labs.
That's the one. What he said. All right. Obviously, I mean, that money goes, I think when I started, it was either the last year that it was free or the first year that it was paid. And there was some pushback, people saying, oh, why we got to pay you $10 now? It was always free. Yeah, but it's not like you organize this and you're just putting it in your pocket. You're doing this it's benefiting. It's like everything else. The Writers Helping Writers program for, like my MFA and all this other stuff. If you want to be part of this community and you think it matters even a bit, $10 is nothing once a year. I mean, I get it. Not everyone has the money for it. And if you can't, okay. But, it shouldn't be an excuse to entry. Anyway, I'm coming off too judgmental. Anyway, what I would say.
Well, no, some people have actually said, hey, if there's someone who can't afford the $10, I'll pay for them.
Yeah, and that too. That's the thing about this community is you can work with it, and everyone is so generous and giving. And you know, if you consider that, if you don't count the postage and the postcards, which they add up to, entry for the last 5 years has been $50 for me, right? 5 years, $50. I've written 200 poems. I've received 200 poems. Is that not worth $50? You know, I mean, again, I get it that not everyone is in the position to do that. And I think it's awesome that we have a group of people who are willing to help out. And so the first thing I would say is, if you can't afford it, if you literally just aren't in that financial place, speak up anyway, because everyone wants you to be part of it. The best approach to the POPO Fest is to really engage with everyone, because their energy is contagious. I'm not the kind of person who writes every day most of the time. But I get around the Terry Holzmans and the Paul Nelsons and everyone else, and I'm like, and Walter Lowe, there's another name that I haven't dropped yet. And I'm part of it, you know, and it sweeps you up and it makes you better just by being part of it. And I would say, don't go in with any expectation other than the sense that you're going to do something for others, and it's going to be so incredibly beneficial for you at the same time. It's a mutually beneficial thing. And that's what's so great about it too. And that's why people are willing to give, you know, the entry fee for you if you absolutely can't afford it, because we all get so much out of it. And I think that's an important thing to understand when you go in. It's a commitment, but it's also a gift.
Do you have a postcard poem of your own that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I have, let's see. Did it have to be from this year? I mean, it can be this year, but I really only went through, I don't know why I asked, because I really only went through and looked at the ones from this year anyway, but I don't know. Probably shouldn't read the one that I sent to you this year.
You can read whatever you care to read. It's your show.
Well, one of the things, and again, this is another thing I mentioned earlier, that that it's like, it feels like it's the only good thing on Facebook right now, because my Facebook wall has been so full of just horrible things, and then people being horrible, and then you go into this Popo Fest page and it's like a refuge. um and it's where am I getting at with this? I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm also stalling while I call up the poem, is that Facebook's become so toxic at times that I'm so glad to have the Postcard Fest, because I probably would have just completely left Facebook by now if it wasn't for that.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, it's me and everyone else, but this is all just a preface to one of the poems I wrote. This one went to Dinosaur Rich Mashner, Tim Mateer, and Judy Jensen, and Nancy Harrison Saylor, all those folks down in Austin that I met the one year, also part, you know, big core group, Linda Roller. Anyway, this is all just a preface to say that that's what inspired this poem. And it's been like a thought that just built and built, and I had no place to put it until I was like, okay, I'm going to write this poem. So sorry for all that, but here we go. All right, it's called Tethered to the Rage Machine. My hand clenches more than ever. Trump rolls back the Endangered Species Act, and I don't even have the time to react with the blistered tomato face before another headline. Planned Parenthood forced to defund, and another shooting, and my will is gone. My hands are claws with nothing to attack. So I swipe down the screen on the rage machine to find a fight where I expect to see guns with the right to vote and healthcare, but instead, these faces I know from some starved part of my brain emerge, blurry like my favorite song with the sound too far down, and I try to focus on the good that's left, but it's all just too loud.
Blistered tomato face.
Yeah, you know, the anger emoji.
I love that. You could do a whole poem of impressions of emojis.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, Gabriel, I am so honored and humbled by your inspired POPO participation that I'm grateful that you signed up to do this half an hour interview, and grateful for your ongoing participation in the fest, and wish you continued success. And I hope future fests find your life going easier, so that you have more time to dedicate to the inner arts.
Yeah, well, thank you again for inviting me to do this interview and for making this whole thing happen to begin with, because without you, there's no fest to begin, to start with, and to have grown this far, 13 years and counting, is awesome. And I hope it goes for 1,300 years. Like you said, 1 billion people. Okay, we can keep the post office in business, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, and thank you very, very much for all the ways in which this fest has been something integral in my life in the past 5 years.
Stay out of trouble.
Yeah, well, how about you?
I'm doing my best.
All right. Thanks a lot.
See you, brother.
Good night.